In terms of product, Christian, what does the crisis call for? So in other words, what type of products does the market need now?
I would say in terms of product, it's clear that when you are in a crisis, it's not necessarily the best time to create new concept, new product. It was done in the past few years, and we have seen a lot of luxury brands, particularly developed everywhere in the US, in the Middle East, in Europe. Some of them may disappear in the future by lack of size. Some other will grow, of course. So, in terms of concept, although our group has created over the last 40 years several strong concept of hotel, we are more trying to work on a new product, I would say, where we can develop at a worldwide level hundreds of hotels rather than creating a niche concept that we can develop in a dozen of cities only.
If I'll look from an outside point of view to Accor, with your strong exposure to the budget segment and your market dominance in this sector in Europe, you must be better positioned than others to withstand the crisis.
To be very transparent, I would say that, of course, the budget market, which is probably the biggest potential budget branded market, because you have a lot of budget hotels in Europe, of course, 2-star, 1-star, non-branded is the majority of the properties. But in terms of branded hotels, with the exception of France and UK, I have to say, there are still few branded budget and eco hotels. So it's, first of all, the largest market in terms of growth in Europe and elsewhere in the world, by the way. Traditionally, the budget market is more resilient than the upscale market because its base is more domestic. He's less relying on mass market. It's also a good mixture between leisure and corporate, so it's always more resistant. But I have to say that this time it has been different from country to country.
When you get two projects on your table, one is a standardized brand, maybe not too exciting, but well established, very well known, and you have a more fashionable, lifestyle-oriented product. What does your heart and what does your mind say? And where would you give money?
I think my heart is not so important at that point. I love stylish hotels, no worries. But at the end, every hotel product should make sense. And this could be an operator who is chain operating, or it could be also a private person. If the hotel also with operator, chain operator, make no sense, and we have a management contract or franchise contract where some of the operators are not so deep in the theme and would not so deep calculate because they have no responsibility. They get their fees for revenue and they get their fees for hopefully cash on the yield. So it really depends on the product. It really depends on the location. And you mentioned Motel One before. In Germany, I think some of you know that. They are also now going to Europe, and they are attacking now Accor. Accor was absolutely the leader in budget in Germany. There was no other one. We had 8 B&B hotels, but that it is. And now they bring a very good product. They make it stylish. And Accor has to react and has to get the market's share back. So there are so many things. Coming back to your question, you have to watch. Most important at that point is the contract. I mentioned that before. Interesting is the cash flow, and on the long run, it should be also a nice hotel.
If I may add one point, with the crisis, I think that we have a tendency of back to basics. Mm-hmm. So everybody is remembering now that the location are the three major points to be successful. Then to have lifestyle is fine, but I mean it's a niche market, so you cannot develop a lot. And we see clearly now that the product which are the most lifestyle are suffering much more. Mm-hmm. In America, for example, the lifestyle product are losing much more GOP as well, but RevPAR than the traditional one. So it's really back to basic, back to consistency. I think that the bubble is a little bit also not so fashionable now.
Erik, when we speak about creativity in a hotel project, we think usually about architects and designers and not about lawyers. But isn't it the case now that we have to be very creative often in terms of finding the right legal framework?
Things are getting slightly more complicated. We are undergoing a phase of what I call the 3 C's. Number one is everybody is very conservative in its assessments, in its thoughts, in its next steps. That's true for the owners, that's true for the banks, that's true for the operators, and that's also true for the consultants. We have a second C that says we are very cautious, meaning that not every project is done, not every project is done the way it could be done 5 years ago. The third C is everything is suddenly critical. Listening to Christian and Dirk just before already shows the stretch developers are in the moment. On the one hand, it becomes more and more important to develop a product that will be perceived well by the customers, by the guests. Without guests, that hotel cannot live. However, the operators would like to take as little risk as possible on their own shoulder, try to clear their balance sheet from every burden they can have. Now, the bank who should carry that risk says, well, but show me that you believe in this hotel in one way or the other, so that what Christian mentioned, location, 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 is extremely important. The bank will get an opinion from you guys that this is feasible, doable, but that is a forward-looking statement. And as we all know, that forward-looking statements in the past, did not really work out that well. And the little footnote you have in every of our opinions and your opinions actually works against you. So the bank says, show me something, dear operator, that I can tell, yes, you're willing to take the risk of that location to some extent. And here we stand with an operator who wants to only manage a hotel with as little risk as possible, and a bank that says, well, I'm not going to carry all that risk, and an owner who would like to see an exit and would, of course, prefer a lease because that's easiest to sell to German funds, for instance. They say, look, but I need a minimum return or whatever. And here we are in the middle of what we call hybrid agreements. For whatever reason, we call them hybrids. But probably it is because it's in the middle between no risk on one side, all risk on the other, wherever that is. And this is where people, fortunately, get very creative.